Okay, welcome back to the Caribou Media Outdoors podcast. With me today is Morris Shawn from Roadpost Inc. and Zoleo Satellite Communicators. Good afternoon. How are you?
I'm great, Josh. How are you?
Good, good. Thanks for
Good.
coming on here.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I really wanted to get the word out about this amazing device you guys have created because it's definitely come in handy for me on a number of my hunting and scouting trips, and I wanted to kind of spread the word as much as possible. Um, can you kind of give everybody an idea of like who you are and what your job is at the company and things like that?
Sure. My name is Morris Shawn. I'm the president of Zoleo and of Roadpost. Zoleo is a joint venture company between Roadpost and another partner. And so basically, Roadpost has been in the satellite communications business since, I guess, Iridium launched over 20 years ago now.
Okay.
And have been in the personal messaging, satellite messaging business, really starting with before InReach actually, and then with InReach, and more recently with Zoleo about 5 years ago. We
Okay.
launched Zoleo, yeah.
Um, so the way that I came across Zoleo is I was planning a trip out to British Columbia.
Mhm.
I'm in Ontario, but my wife's cousin lives in BC, and he's a hunting guide out there. So I was going out to hunt elk with him, and I knew we were going to be way off the beaten path, away from any kind of cell phone service.
Yeah.
So I started looking into satellite communicators, and of course, like you said, the InReach came up, and then I started seeing videos of this, and this for me made a lot of sense because not only can you use it alone on its own,
Mhm.
you can also open up a number of features when it's connected to your cell phone, and it's the peace of mind of being able to reach out to family members and actually text back and forth in real time. And if you just want to send a quick message that you're okay, you just hit a button on the front of it. Like it's just so well thought out. And I just wanted to go over a bit of the features, so if there's people listening or watching that have no idea what we're talking about, um, let's get into it a little bit here.
Sure.
So so on the front face, there's a check mark button here.
Mhm. Yes, that is the check-in button. So you have access to send a check-in, which is basically an "I'm okay" message to a list of contacts back home, whoever you designate ahead of time. And we find that is a very useful feature. Obviously, safety is a primary use case, and a lot of times people back home just want to know that you're okay. So that's a very quick, easy, inexpensive way of letting them know that you're fine no matter where you are, no matter how remote.
And it'll even send your whoever you have on your list. um, I believe is it up to 5 contacts you can have on that check-in list?
Yeah. Yes, that's correct.
So it'll send out like your GPS coordinate, like location,
Yeah,
and they can click on
exactly.
it and see
Yeah,
on the
and see
map,
on the map exactly where you are.
which is very
Yeah.
cool. I use that a lot with my wife. I'll just be like, it's been a while. I'm all right, or it's
Yeah, no, it is helpful, and what we find is it can also come in handy if someone hasn't heard from you in a while, or you haven't sent a check-in in a while, and they can message you. If you don't respond, at least they have a record of where you kind of last were,
Mhm.
you last sent that check-in. So it's quite handy. And there's also a location share plus feature, which basically sends tracking data. That's another way that people can, sort of have an idea of where you were
Right.
too long ago, at least.
Yeah, that's an awesome feature too. So they can
Mhm.
actually track not necessarily just see where you are now, but they can kind of track where
You're
you've
right.
been, your
Yeah.
route. Yeah, which is neat.
Yeah.
Um, what I tend to do is I literally clip this onto. I usually wear a binocular like a chest harness.
Mhm.
I clip it on there, and I have it on whether I'm in cell phone service or not. I find it's just a nice kind of, it's a nice peace of mind thing to have with you. And if you do end up using a message and you are in cell phone service or Wi-Fi service, it's going to use those avenues instead of coming off of your dedicated messages that you have set for your plan.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, that was one of the innovative features of Zoleo. And I think it sort of reflects, I didn't tell you much about the history, but Roadpost, prior to developing and launching Zoleo, was the Canadian distributor for the InReach device when it was originally launched by a company called Delorme that was out of Maine.
Okay.
Garmin ended up acquiring Delorme, and that sort of was the end of our distribution agreement. Garmin obviously has its own distribution, but we learned so much from working with the InReach. We had been involved with the development, but we had, over the 7 or 8 years, we had built up this great subscriber base, a lot of product ambassadors who gave us great feedback about the product. And it really informed what we wanted to do with Zoleo, where we saw, potentially gaps in the marketplace that we could fill. And one of them really was that ability to use it inside and outside of cell service, because you may be in communication with someone, sending messages back and forth, then you're back in cell service. And don't really want to be using or turn off your satellite device. You don't want those messages to be lost in the ether.
Right.
With Zoleo, essentially, you'll receive those messages over a Wi-Fi or cell connection as well, and back to the app on your phone.
Right, and there's also a dedicated phone number and email that you can create. Can you go into that a little bit?
Yeah, that was another Zoleo innovation. That's another Zoleo innovation. Basically, with the InReach, you had to wait for the person with the device needed to initiate a conversation. And so, if I'm back home and my wife is out on a hike and I want to message her, if she hasn't messaged me first, I can't really communicate with her because there's no dedicated phone number or email address. With Zoleo, you do have a mobile number and email address. So, I could text with her just like I'm texting with anyone. I don't need to wait for her to contact me first.
Yeah, and that actually happened. On that trip I was talking about. One of the people I was with had an InReach, and he was trying to connect with somebody we were going to meet up with. And he said, I keep sending the message, but he's not looking at his device, or he doesn't have it switched on or whatever. So they couldn't connect with each other until that happened. So it's nice that there's a number of different features that you can use both directly with the device, but you can also reach out in a number of other ways if you can't get a hold of people, which is really awesome.
Sure.
I also like the fact that the SOS button is covered under this little tab here, which is very handy, and that it's like an embossed button, so you really know that, yes, I'm definitely pushing this, right?
Exactly.
It's not like, oops, oh no, right? It's if you're hitting that button, you've gone through a couple layers of defense first. So
you don't want to roll over on the SOS button. And
no, exactly, right?
Wake up to helicopters overhead.
That's right. And thankfully I haven't had to use it yet, but it is nice to know that if you ever do end up smashing that SOS button, if your phone is dead, the device will send your GPS. Is it every 5 minutes, I believe, updating the first responders, I think?
Yes, every 5 minutes.
And then if you do have your phone working, you can text in real time with the people that are coming to find you and give updates. Or you can even say, this is the problem, if it's a bear attack or you've got a broken leg or whatever it is, to kind of get the first responders, even more prepared for what they're going to be coming across, which is
yes. Yeah. The one correction I would make to that is that when you press the SOS button, essentially it connects you to Global Rescue, which is our
Right.
SES partner. They are interfacing with the first responders essentially on your behalf. They will have
That's right.
connection. Yeah, and the reason for that is, depending where you are, within Canada, I forget what the number is, but it could be one of several hundred agencies that's responsible for where you are. So it might be the OPP, the RCMP, the local police force, Coast Guard. There are so many different jurisdictions, I guess, when it comes to search and rescue. And what Global Rescue does is they have this worldwide database. So they know based on where you are exactly who they need to connect with and how to connect with them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I get this question a lot. People always wonder if they end up sending a helicopter to come and get me, do I get a bill later?
Yeah.
Is it like an ambulance where you get a $50 bill, invoice in the mail a few weeks later?
It's tough to answer because every jurisdiction handles it differently.
Right.
I would say generally in North America, you won't get a bill, I think, especially if it's a legitimate emergency. If it's something,
right,
that clearly on the face of it did not require that type of response, you may. But if it's a legitimate emergency or you legitimately thought it was an emergency, everything turned out to be okay, you generally won't get a bill. But it's really up to the individual jurisdictions. In other parts of the world, it tends to be different. It's more likely that you will actually get charged.
Yeah. So for those of you that are curious, as long as you're in Canada, you're probably good.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
we will be introducing an add-on, I think before the summer, essentially a protection plan from Global Rescue through us that covers a certain amount of search and rescue costs if there are costs associated with it.
That's nice, like an insurance policy almost.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's awesome. And there's the other thing I like is that you guys are constantly updating and providing more services. So recently there was a medical assist feature where you can ask a question instead of maybe if you were on the fence of hitting the SOS or not, but now you can get connected with a medical person and ask your question.
Yeah, and that's also with Global Rescue. It's the same group that actually triages SOS situations, and they have like trained medical professionals on staff. And it does happen a lot, right? You may be, out there and feeling a certain way, weak or dizzy or whatever, and you're just, you don't want to necessarily trigger a helicopter coming, or whoever the first responder is for that area, but you want to understand what's going on. So Medical Assist is available on the app, and essentially establishes a direct connection with trained personnel, and you could describe what you're feeling, what the situation is, and they will basically give you advice. If it is an SOS situation, they will tell you to press the SOS button based on what you're telling them. But it could be something as simple as, I'm out of medication. Is there, I think I'm a couple kilometers away from a town. Is there a pharmacy there that's open now? So it really can run the gamut, but it's sort of, we call it almost pre-SOS. So
yeah. It's like having an assistant in your pocket.
Exactly. And that's really proven, that's unique to Zoleo and has really proven to be a very popular feature among our
for sure.
Yeah.
And there's also weather reports, which are, again, especially when you're on long camping trips where you're going to be roughing it out in the elements. It's always nice to know what's coming, and those are updated obviously through the satellite and everything. So you're getting firsthand knowledge of what the weather's going to be.
Yeah, and you could pull it down on the latest forecast on demand, and yeah, especially exactly when you're remote or if you're in the mountains where weather can change quite quickly, it's invaluable.
And the messaging is very quick. I wasn't quite sure what I was going to expect when I first started using it, but
Mhm.
it's surprisingly fast for something has to get up to, so that's another,
Yeah.
you're not
Uh,
waiting 3 or 4 minutes to get a response from somebody. It's fairly quick.
no, it'll generally, I should give the caveat also, it really sort of depends on your situation. So you're with any satellite device, essentially, you need to be line of sight to the device. So if you have, some big physical object, if you're in downtown Toronto, it's going to be harder to get a connection. You'll have to wait for the satellite to pass right overhead. But generally, you are right that the connection to the satellite is super fast. You just do need to be aware of your surroundings, essentially. Better to be in a more clear area and not have obstacles in the way of the sky.
Mm-hmm. Just want to take a quick break to talk to you about a couple of things that I've been using that I think might benefit you. One is this Numa Outdoors gear. This is in their Casa OV pattern, which is great whitetail pattern when you're up in a tree in the fall and late season. They also have a Casa pattern which has more green in it, which is good for spring through to the fall. Numa has given me a code to give to you of Caribou Media 20, which will save you 20% at checkout. Another product here that I've been using for years now is the Bulldog targets. This is a Canadian made target. They're made in Manitoba. They have a lifetime warranty. I've used that warranty twice now on a couple of my larger targets that are outside. It's very simple, very easy. These targets are 2-finger removal every single time, which is incredible. Field point only target. Bulldog's been gracious enough to give me a 20% discount code to give to you at checkout. Use code BD20-Caribou-Media. That'll save you 20% on these awesome targets. Now back to the show. Another thing, the battery life.
Mm-hmm.
So when I went out to BC, we were gone for 8 days, I believe. Mm-hmm. And on day 6, I was still at 30%.
Yeah.
So I would have lasted, I think the advertised is 8 days.
Mm-hmm.
I ended up plugging it in just because I had the ability to, but I really didn't have to. I could have gone the entire trip. That's incredible. 8,
Yeah.
and that was me turning it on in the morning, having it on all day, and then shutting it down again when I got into my sleeping bag. So
yeah. No, it's key. The battery, obviously the battery life is just one of the main things when you're out there. You don't want to have a dead device.
Yeah, and it's just charged with a micro USB. So I had I had a solar panel that I was using to charge power banks, and then I'd take the power bank with me for the day and end up plugging things in that way. And it really worked out.
That's good. Yeah.
So, do you know if there's going to be any options coming for more than just having it say I'm okay? Like, will there be maybe like I'm in the car, I'm on my way home, or other different
Other preset messages?
Mm-hmm.
I don't think we have anything like that planned in the near term on our near-term roadmap, but that is a request we've heard from our subscribers as something that they would like to see.
Okay.
So it's under consideration maybe for future iterations.
Gotcha. Okay. Should we go over some of the monthly plans?
Sure. Yeah. So we have 3 plans that in Canada start at $25 a month, which would give you 25 satellite messages unlimited messages if they're going over cellular or Wi-Fi. There's no charge for SOS messages, so that's not included within the 25. The 25 essentially is text or app-to-app messaging. So, we sort of alluded to this, but you can send anyone a text message or receive a text message from their whatever app they're using to and from whatever app they're using. There's also an app-to-app function. So the person back home who's not using Zoleo can still download the Zoleo app for free, and that lets you send and receive much longer messages, 900 character messages, as opposed to a typical text message, which is more like 160 or 180 characters.
Right.
So that is the entry-level plan, I guess. There is a 3-month minimum term, but after that, you can turn it off whenever you like. You can either completely deactivate it, or you can put it into a suspension mode and then reactivate it, I guess, when your season starts again. So if you're a hunter, you're using it for that, several months of hunting season. If you don't plan on using it after that until the next hunting season, you can either deactivate it or put it in suspension mode and then reactivate it. The advantage of suspension mode is you don't need to pay another activation fee, and you keep the same phone number and history. From that plan, that's the basic plan, we have a mid plan that is $45 a month, includes 250 messages instead of 25, and we have an unlimited plan at $70 a month. And they all have the same thing in terms of suspensions, if that's 3 minimum.
Yeah, it's a nice, definitely a nice variety for sure.
Yeah. It's interesting. Once people subscribe to Zoleo, they do tend to stay active, because even if their main activity is seasonal, and especially depending on where they live, if they tend to live in more, more northern communities and not necessarily in a big city where there's cell coverage all around, they like to have the peace of mind, even if they're driving somewhere and outside of coverage, to have an ability to connect in case something happens.
And for those who don't know, can you explain a little bit what the Iridium satellite network is?
Sure. Yeah, the Iridium satellite network, they're on their 2nd generation, I guess, of satellites, but it's what is called a LEO satellite network. So Zoleo, I guess, plays on that a little bit. But LEO stands for low Earth orbit. So these are satellites that are not that high above the Earth, which means you don't need a huge antenna or battery to connect with them. So when you see those huge satellite dishes, those huge round satellite dishes,
or the phones with the big satellite phones with the huge antenna,
Yeah. So some of those devices are connected more to geostationary satellites, which are in a fixed place above the equator and higher altitude, and that's why they need a bigger antenna and more power to connect with them. Gotcha. So Iridium has a constellation of 66 satellites that are constantly circling the globe, North Pole to South Pole, constantly moving, and so when you basically send or receive a Zoleo message, it is connecting to one of those satellites, and that message will later come down to Earth at, it'll sort of be bounced among the satellites and then be downloaded to the Earth station that is in Tempe, Arizona, and from there go into the public internet, essentially, and be delivered to the recipient. But Iridium is really the gold standard of satellite networks for this type of purpose, because of the quality of their network and the sort of North Pole to South Pole coverage. So, some of the other satellite networks, for example, in northern Canada, wouldn't have as great connectivity.
Right. Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, I didn't realize that they were lower orbit. That's interesting.
Yeah.
And it's always good to have, like I said, I usually wear mine out in the open. It's better
Yeah.
to not put it in a bag. You can put it on the bag, but not necessarily in something. It should be exposed and have, like you were saying, direct contact to the sky as possible.
Yeah. No, that's definitely good. Although, I will say often if I'm driving in a remote area out of cell coverage, I'll just have it on the dash, and the messages will get through the windshield pretty. It may not be as instantaneous as sort of where you're carrying it on a chest strap, but yeah, it works quite well still.
And there are some accessories for that also come along. There's a cradle kit that's got a little clasp that goes on the back, so you can actually clip it if you don't want to use the carabiner.
Yeah.
And then there's also a universal mount for your car that'll go onto your windshield, which I'm sure comes in handy. Do you get like? Would you say? I know that I'm seeing a lot more people in the hunting space gravitating this way.
Yeah.
Are you finding most of your customers are more like adventure outdoors people, or like what's the demographic like?
Sure. I would say yes. I would say probably the majority of our subscribers. So the hunting community is obviously very important. We see snowmobilers in Canada,
Right.
ATV users, off-roading, hiking is huge, fishing. So basically, any adventure that you could imagine people doing, that is among our community. But we also are seeing a lot of what I guess I would call emergency preparedness. Maybe, yeah. So that tends to be, we have a lot of that in the US and hurricane areas and so forth.
Okay.
And wildfire areas. And in Canada, we don't have hurricanes, but we do have wildfires. So we see that in some of those areas that are more prone to natural disasters. And we also see that among corporate customers, I guess, that may equip their workers or even facilities in remote places with Zoleo devices as a backup communication mechanism.
And just to go over some of the tech specs, I'm sure people are going to wonder. So the weight of the device itself is 5.3 ounces. It's water resistant up to 1.5 meters.
I didn't brush up on that before.
No, it's okay. Right. That's okay. I'm reading it off the website myself.
Save me from reading it off the website.
No, it's all good. Yeah, I just knew that these questions will probably come up. It's let's see here.
Very heavily resistant. Yeah.
Oh yeah, like it's got this rubberized coating, which is like you can bounce this around. Not that I recommend that, but it's not gonna break on you. Again, it's got a lithium-ion internal rechargeable battery life up to 200 plus hours. Like I said, I am living proof that is true. It does go for. It can go up to 8 days without you touching a recharging device, and takes about 2 hours to charge from being completely dead. So the operating temperature is minus 20 degrees Celsius, so minus 4 Fahrenheit to 55 degrees Celsius, so 131 degrees Fahrenheit. So from your coldest places to your warmest, you'll be in good shape.
Yeah, exactly. We've had people using them in all sorts of situations and all sorts of extreme environments.
Mm-hmm. And another thing is the price point is a fraction of what some of the competitors are.
Yeah, it is. We did. We put a lot of focus on. I would say delivering value is one thing, both in terms of the rate plans and in terms of the device itself. So I think our device price really is sort of leads the market, but not really compromising on functionality. May not have a ton of bells and whistles, but for messaging, safety, and so forth, we want to be best in class, essentially. And I think we've delivered on that, and I think our success shows it. And then the other piece that we really wanted to focus on was sort of simplicity. We wanted people to be able to have as familiar a messaging experience, exactly what they're used to from picking up their iPhone or Android phone and whatever messaging app they use. We didn't want to have a steep learning curve at all. We just wanted someone to be able to pick it up and use it. And I think the feedback is that we've accomplished that.
Absolutely, for sure. Yeah, I know some of them you'd have to use the buttons to the numbers of the buttons.
Very difficult. Yeah.
Very, very difficult. So this is a lot faster and more efficient to get your information out to those who you're trying to share it with.
Yeah, exactly.
Awesome. Do you have any stories from anybody or personal ones that you can share about?
Yeah, I mean, luckily, personally, I have not had to use it to trigger an SOS, but you mentioned an elk hunt in BC, and actually we just a few months ago had a story or an SOS incident in BC, northern BC. A group were out on I think it was a 3-week elk hunt. And in the group, there was a father and son. The son was a Zoleo subscriber. They were at camp, and the father, who was 85 years old, went off to find a fishing hole, essentially. Didn't come back for a couple of hours, but when he did, he was not in good shape. It turned out he had fallen off a 20-foot cliff, had actually had broken his neck in 2 places, and I think had a back injury, and somehow made it back to camp. His son obviously triggered the SOS, and he said within 30 seconds he was communicating with Global Rescue, and within an hour there were RCMP was on the scene with SUVs and so forth. His father ended up getting helicoptered out to a medical facility, and thank God, knock wood, made a miraculous recovery, which is that actually is probably the most incredible part of this story, because 85 years old, it's not necessarily that easy to recover from stuff. But we saw pictures of kind of the shape that he was in when he came back to camp. So hearing those stories obviously is very really affects us, myself and the team at Zoleo, because really, it's a business, but kind of to be able to impact people's lives in that way is really gratifying.
Oh, for sure. And just hearing those stories must be nice, knowing that it's really helping people. It's really there doing what it's supposed to do, what it's designed to do in the moment when they need it the most, right? Like I could have this strapped to me for years and never have to utilize any of the emergency features, but it's amazing to know that like that quickly you can connect with,
for sure,
with Global Rescue.
And what we see a lot, which is kind of interesting, is that a lot of times it might not be the subscriber themselves who have an injury. Like they come across a car accident, or they come across another hiker who has twisted their ankle and can't move or get out. So that's something maybe people don't think about when they subscribe to something like this, but that ability to help other people who might be in distress as well is something we see a lot.
Almost like an nice added feature to your first aid kit.
Yeah, yeah, for
You know,
sure.
because you never know when you're going to need it.
Yeah.
Is there anything coming up in the future with Zoleo that you can share with us, or is it a top secret? If it is, that's fine. I'm not trying to press you.
No, we are. There's definitely a lot of stuff that will come up over the next. It's sort of continual. We have releases continually, so we are looking at some improvements and enhancements to basic sort of location and SOS functionality. We are looking at sort of the other apps and things that people use and how we connect to those apps and add more functionality maybe to some of the other tools that people use. So, I can't get too specific, but I think you will, going into the summer and fall, see some nice improvements.
It's also nice that because it's an app, there is an app involved that you can literally add things to it on the fly and constantly update and change things and improve to it, and that service is just going to get better and better and better as time goes on.
Yeah, exactly, and that's the nice thing about having the functionality really mostly in the app, aside from the check-in button and the SOS on the device itself. Also available on the device itself.
Yeah, and our family members appreciate it, that's for sure, because I know that, like, my wife always likes to know that she can get in touch with me, because there are times where I've gone places where there's no service, and before I had this, and she's like, I really hate it when you go up there because I have no idea what's going on, or if you're lying there hurt somewhere or whatever. So it's
we often say the customer is, in a lot of cases, the customer isn't the person out in the field, is the person back home.
Yeah.
Driving the need for this, because they want to know that everything's okay, obviously.
Right. Awesome. That's great. Is there anything else you wanted to mention before we jump off here?
Nothing in particular, just that, I appreciate you having us on. It's always great to talk to people who are using Zoleo and understanding what they like, what they don't like. We do pride ourselves on being driven, I guess, by the requirements of our subscribers, and that's where a lot of our ideas come from. So I do appreciate hearing about your experiences with Zoleo, and obviously the opportunity to talk about it to the people who are tuning in.
For sure. And there's going to be a giveaway coming up at some point, so stay tuned for that. You might be able to win yourself one of these amazing devices, but we won't share too much of that here. You'll have to stay tuned, and it'll be over social media, but I'll give lots of notice for when that's about to come through. So thanks again for joining me here and jumping on today. And if hopefully we can have you on again in the future as more and more updates come, we can get the word out about how
I would love that.
Awesome lifesaver this little device is. So awesome. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Josh. Appreciate it.